So we have been each month talking about one of the 12 powers. And if you don't know about the 12 powers, our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, kind of expanded on each of the powers that we have. They're God-given powers. And he has related them to one of the 12 disciples, the one that he considered best exemplified the powers. And he also applied them to a placement in our body. And so the powers that we have talked about throughout the first months are love, wisdom, faith, understanding, release, and divine order. Thank you. And one of the things that we have to remember about our 12 powers is that it is important that we use them together. That if we get too focused on one power, we can easily get ourselves out of alignment. That it is important that we are taking time to activate these powers, all of these powers in us, and to bring them forth in their fullness in our lives. And so today we are talking about the power of zeal. Woohoo! And so I'm going to ask us to share this one more time, not one more time, again, together. I fairly and woohoo! That was awesome. That was great zeal and enthusiasm. That was fun. So I want to share with you a couple of stories of some people that harnessed their power of zeal and brought it forth in a couple different ways. The first one is during the deepest and darkest days of apartheid, the government was doing everything that they could to shut down any opposition. And so there was going to be a protest, and they canceled that protest. But Archbishop Desmond Tutu declared that he would hold a church service instead. And so in St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, South Africa, this cathedral was filled with worshipers. But outside, there were hundreds of police officers gathering. And during the service, they walked in, lined up on both sides of the cathedral. They were armed, and they were taking notes and writing down what Desmond Tutu had to say. But he would not be intimidated. He preached against the evils of apartheid, declaring that it would not endure. And then he looked directly at the police officers, and he said to them with power, with zeal, with enthusiasm and passion, "You are powerful. You are very powerful, but you are not gods. And I serve a God who cannot be mocked. So, since you've already lost, I invite you to come and join the winning side." At that moment, everybody in the cathedral got up, music came on, and they started dancing. There was just this huge energy, and the police officers didn't know what to do because their intimidation didn't work. And it was Desmond Tutu's, his enthusiasm and his passion that about God and the goodness of God, and that goodness would always triumph over evil. And as we know, it was just a matter of time. So, Sir Winston Churchill, you may not know this about him, but it took him 3 years to pass 8th grade because he could not learn English. And so it was interesting that Oxford University asked him to be a speaker at their commencement exercises. And so he arrived with his usual props, his top hat, his cigar, and his cane. And as he approached the podium, the crowd just arose in applause. And with such dignity and such grace, he was able to bring that energy down. And he placed his top hat on the podium, placed his cigar, put his cane up against the podium, and then he looked around at every person, and he just took his time. And then with this enthusiasm, he looked at them and he said, "Never give up." And then he just stopped for a few more moments, taking his time again and just looking around. They got up on his tiptoes, and once again, with this enthusiasm, "Never give up." And then got his top hat on, and he grabbed a cigar. There was a deafening silence. It was like his words just thundered in their ears. And then he walked away from the podium. And that was his commencement speech. And I know that I've heard that never give up over and over in my lifetime. And you know, what a great example of that. So today we are talking about zeal. Thank you, Kathy. Charles Fillmore, and the revealing word tells us that zeal is intensity, ardor, I had to look that up, which is passion, enthusiasm, the inward fire of the soul that urges man onward, regardless of the intellectual mind of caution and conservatism. Anybody have an intellectual mind of caution and conservatism? Yeah. He said that zeal is the mighty force that incites the winds, the tides, and the storms. It urges the planet on its course and spurs the ant to greater exertion. It is the urge behind all things. Zeal is the affirmative impulse of existence. Its command is go forward. Now I'm going to go back for just a second to this little thing that kind of bothered me. It said, spurs the ant to greater exertion. Because I want my ants to let go of their zeal. So I've tried everything to get rid of these ants, and it's like, and I think I've done it, and then bam, they're back. So I think I'll go home and pray over them. And okay, so the power of zeal, the apostle, the disciple that he paired with this is Simon the Zealot. And Simon was known for his fierce loyalty. But he was also known for his ability to be able to convert people. So when the other apostles would not be able, they go out and they're trying to bring people into Christianity, but they couldn't get somebody, they would call Simon the Zealot. And it said that in about 15 minutes, he had them to the place where they were converted to Christianity. And it also says that although Simon was a rabid revolutionist, a fearless firebrand of agitation, that he gradually subdued his fiery nature until he became a powerful and effective preacher and preached of goodwill and peace on earth among men. And so what he did was he learned to harness that energy of zeal in a way that he brought the kingdom forth from him. And he was able to help instigate that in other people around him. Now, the power of zeal in the placement is in the base of the stem, the stem of the brain, and the medulla oblongata, and its color is orange. Yep, that's why I'm orange today. Charles goes on to say that zeal is the great universal force that impels humankind to spring forward in a field of endeavor and accomplish the seeming miraculous. The highest expression of zeal, and this is important for us to know, is an unflagging, fervent interest in knowing, speaking, and doing good. So what this is about is harnessing that zeal in a way that we truly are using it for the greater good of all. Now, one of the things that comes out of zeal is enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is that power that it drives us with energy. It is our starting power, and it is our saving power. And I read that it is our urge to stretch, our drive to excel, our desire to improve and to contribute. And I think we all have that desire, right? We want to improve and to contribute. Charles Fillmore said, enthusiasm is the impulse to go forward and the urge behind all things. I love that. The urge behind all things is kind of like the power behind it. Now, the word entheos, the root word for that, the word enthusiasm, the root word is entheos. And entheos means on fire with God and filled with God. And so the idea here, again, is that we're harnessing this power of zeal and we're using it as deep joy and enthusiasm to just bring that godness forth in its greatest expression through us. And again, it was Charles Fillmore, 93-94, that he wrote, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm, spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. And here's the thing. is that Charles passed a number of months after writing that. But the thing that is so beautiful was he was still on fire with God. He was on fire, and he was all about living and loving and just continuing to bring that forth until he was ready to pass from this earth. Now, there are a number of people, and I can't get to all of you, but that I feel that really express zeal and enthusiasm, and one of them, of course, is Kenneth Reitmeyer, one of our licensed Unity teachers. And for most of you, if you've been around Kenneth or in any of his classes, man, he is enthusiastic because his desire is to help everyone just live their best life. And I love that zeal in him. How many of us remember Norma Jean Mulligan? A lot of us. I'm so glad. Now, Norma Jean and her daughter Dottie and her husband Ed moved to Hawaii a while ago. But Dottie stays in contact with me, and she sent me a beautiful picture of Norma Jean. For those of you who don't know Norma Jean, she's this little, but probably about here, little woman, white hair, and she was always at the front door. And she greeted everybody with this beautiful zeal. And when you would come in, it would be Norma Jean's face that you would see. It would be the big smile, and she would grab you and take your hands, or she would hug you, and it was always such a sincere greeting that throughout the years I've had so many people say to me, it was Norma Jean that brought me back here because of her zeal. And I love that. I was thinking about this. I didn't share this first service, but because zeal shows up in so many different ways. I don't know how many of you know that Paul actually rode his bike half the way across the country last year. So from Sedalia to the northernmost point of Maine. And he is now getting ready to ride from San Diego back here. And so what I recognize is that enthusiasm, that zeal, that passion comes forth in a quieter way in him. But that is what urges him to get up every day and go ride a gazillion miles to train for that. So I say that just to say that this comes forth in a lot of different ways for us. Now, as I said before, it's important that we use other powers with our powers. And so with the power of zeal, we want to use wisdom, and we want to use love, and we want to use understanding so that they can be directed to spiritual growth. But the partner of zeal is the power of order. And how many of us, when our lives feel really in order and our lives are just flowing in a good way, let me ask this way, how do you feel? Great, good. You feel terrific. You feel excited. You feel energized. You feel like I can conquer the world because it feels, so good. And so it's important to have order with zeal. And our order faculty helps us to put first things first, to be more organized. It's our ability to know what's important, to set priorities, to set healthy boundaries, and to organize and plan. Now, sometimes we get all fired up with enthusiasm and we head off in all directions, right? I mean, we've probably done that in our lives. I'm going to tell you, one of the things that I actually enjoy doing when I have the time to do it is I actually enjoy cleaning my house. But here's the thing for me is that when I actually have the time, I know I've got a day and I can put my earphones in and listen. I love to listen to other ministers, and I'm like, I've got enthusiasm and zeal, and I'll go in maybe to the bathroom and I'll start cleaning off the sink, and then I'll think, I need something in the kitchen. I'll go in the kitchen and I've got this other project, and I get into that, and then I think, wait, I've got to go downstairs and get the laundry, and I go down there, and what happens is 4 hours later, nothing is done. I see a lot of you out there going, And this is especially prevalent, girls, in our female brains, because we have all kinds of different things that are going on. But how many of you men experience that? Any? Yeah, okay. So when we bring the power of order into that, then we're going to be more organized, and we're actually going to get some stuff done. Doesn't that feel really good that we can actually get some stuff done? Now, Charles also talked about overzealous people. And so I'm going to read to you what he said. Overzealous people tend to be overly active, overly involved in myriad projects, unable to set healthy boundaries to others' demands and needs, have too many irons in the fire, and drive themselves full speed ahead. And the problem with that is that when we're in that place, that we're going to crash. We're going to burn out. We're going to break down and possibly lose people that we care about. And it actually affects our health. And I have known many people throughout the course of the time that I've been here who what I really got was that there was such a desire to serve that they felt they needed to serve everyone. And yet it burned them out. And so being able to bring in that power of order and that power of wisdom and discernment and recognize and realize that it is affecting their health. Now, the opposite of zealousy, is that a word? Zeal it's a new word. Guess what? New word. Sue's dictionary. Yeah, there. The opposite, the lack of zeal, is apathy and boredom, expecting others to do our work for us, thinking things will get better without our help, and looking to outer events to entertain us. And so clearly these are two opposite ends of the spectrum. But when we're in that place of apathy, that is going to affect our health too, because we're not moving and we're not feeding our spirit. We're not doing the things that are healthy for our mind, body, and spirit. So the goal here is to find this nice center place, a nice balanced place where we're using the power of zeal, but we're using it in a very healthy way. So I was very intrigued by this statement from Charles, because when I first read it, I thought, what? It says, zeal is spirit, silent, still, and is ever urging you onward to your greater awareness of your Christ self. I thought, zeal is silent and still? Because that was so opposite to what I perceived as zeal. But I got it finally, that because zeal is one of our innate 12 powers, the way that we tap into it is by going apart. It's by taking the time to just be in the silence in whatever way that works for you. And to, for me, I always see it as kind of an anchoring down into my solar plexus. And for me, that's where I can feel my 12 powers. And just allowing myself, and I love this, one of the things that was recommended is that with zeal at the base of your brain, just imagine that, and imagine that part of your brain is spiritualized, and that you can affirm for your day, I go forth with a mighty faith, and I do things in an orderly way. But what will help you get there is to take the time. And for me, all it is for me is I'm going into that space, I'm just connecting, I'm feeling the energy. I have no idea what it looks like. I don't try to know what it looks like. I just have in my mind the power of zeal, and I'm open to how that will express. I'm open to divine mind to show me, to help me in this day to know how to express that. Okay, so as we look at things in our country today, how can we use this power of zeal in a very positive way? So one of the things that I want to say here is that I have never said don't look at things that are going on in this world today. I've never said that. I've always said we have to be realistic with that small r and look at what's going on in our country and in our world, in our own personal lives, and we have to figure out how to deal with that personally. But my job as the spiritual leader is to empower and encourage spiritual growth, spiritual and personal growth, and practical ways to be that in this world. And so, it's hard, isn't it, not to just look and look and look at what's going on. I mean, it's bombarded. It's everywhere. It's what everybody's talking about. But here's what I want to say to you, that if we are so focused on this and we're in the energy of this, what are we part of in the creative essence? More. We're feeding it. And so look at it, do what you need to do, and then stop it. Because our power lies now in looking into our spirit. This is where the changes will come from. It'll come from in your personal life. It'll come in your family environment, your work environment, in the community, and in the world. But it has to come from right here. And so I love what Mother Teresa says. She says, I am not against war. I am for peace. And can you feel that shift? That movement from focusing on what we don't want to really bringing forth that enthusiasm and zeal into what it is that we desire. And so some things like, I am not against the economic downturn. I am for economic recovery. I am not against government. I am for the conscious voice of the people to be heard. I am not against the leadership of our country. I am for inspired leadership. I am not against organized religion. I am for religious freedom. I am not against inequality. I am for equal rights for all human beings. Huge shift, isn't that? And here's the thing, you guys, is we have to take responsibility. We can no longer look at what's taking place in our community, in the world around us, and think that we have no part in it, because we do. We have a major part in this. And we have to start looking and saying, what am I feeding? Am I feeding this, or am I remembering that the only true presence and power is love? And that my job as this human being, spiritual being, having a human experience, is to focus most of my time on that energy, is to get so immersed in it that it does spring up from, it springs forward from us in a way that changes us. And then we see the dynamics changing in our family experience, in our work experience. And we start seeing this as more and more of us are waking up to that and making the commitment over and over and over again. And not having excuses why we're not. But making that commitment that we are going to be the fullest expression of love and of goodness, of kindness, compassion, of what we know is needed the most in this world today. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, that we are going to be that expression, and we are no longer going to make excuses why we're not being it. And we're going to take the time to go apart. And we're going to take the time to fill our spirit. You know, I think about a bank account. How many of us would love to have a nice big bank account? And so if we don't put money in the bank account, are we ever even have a chance? No. And so it's the same thing with our spirits, you guys. It's in our world today and in our jobs and things that we're doing, there's so much bombarded at us that is taking us away. And we are unconscious beings walking around doing what we've always done until finally we get it. And finally, we wake up. And finally, we make a different choice. And finally, we are doing that more over and over and over again. And I want to tell you, and I want to tell each and every single one of us, we matter. We are valuable. And that our consciousness, our way of being, our words that we speak, our thoughts that we think, our actions that we take, that they do make a difference. But we're not going to know that if we aren't making that commitment. We have to make that commitment to be the fullest expression of the Christ that we can possibly be. And it's from that place. That is what brings about change. And we don't have to know the how. That's not up to us. The how will express. Because mass consciousness, that's where the power lies. So I'm going to close today with us one more time. I'm going to invite you to stand. And let's, if you would like to, and let's share in this with enthusiasm and with zeal and with power and strength together. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. And so it is, and so it shall be. Namaste. Namaste.